Good morning. Another week here at the micro stakes dojo trenches. You can see I've added a new HUD that I'm trying out. This is the Poker Tracker 6 Game Max Ash Game HUD thingy. I'm pretty happy with it. Generally we sort of have a lot. We have a lot of pre-flop stats both here and here. Maybe kind of too much. Sort of gets into the weeds a little bit, I think, personally. Um, yeah, so you like raise first in, fold to 3-bet after stealing, yeah, et cetera, et cetera. So, and the stats we have at this point are, this one's not bad, 775, but some of these spots like this one, fold to pre-flop 3-bet percentage after stealing button, 1 out of 1. So, not particularly useful, I don't think, at this point. Probably later, I could start rolling this stuff in for exploits. It is helpful, though, to have this stuff, which is just your general pre-flop stats, and then this is your post-flop stats: in position, out of position, 3-bet pots, c-bet flop and 3-bet pot, flop heads up. So, 10 out of 11 trials, not bad. 2 out of 3, 7 out of 8. It'll only get more valuable as more data is gathered. Went to showdown. This is the flop. This is the turn, I believe. Fold to turn, delayed c-bet, 2-bet pot. So, after a point, it just gets more and more crazy and starts to not be useful because it's just too specific and not enough trials. But it's a little better than the one I had. We'll see. I'll use it for a bit and we'll just see how we feel. Session ended up down a buy-in. I think for the most part, we made some good decisions. The other nice thing with this HUD is I can take my stats and cover my stack size and generally play without knowing what my stack is at that point. Every once in a while, I'll check it to make sure that I'm not short stacking. I do have an auto top up. But once we get deeper into a pot and we've made some bigger bets, then obviously I'll need to check to see where we're at with stacked pot. Helps a lot in just making decisions and not worrying about whether we're raking a pot. Helps a lot too that I'm now stacking my tables. I'm only playing 2 at a time, but I stack them. So I'm only looking at the decision points that are necessary, and most of the time, I get it in and then I'll have to go to a different table and the old table just runs out and I don't need to think about things anymore. Just helps to narrow in mind and get head off of results oriented thinking a little bit, I think. Had the usual intentions this morning to continue to be world favorability awareness is high, trying to figure out how favorable a flop, turn, and river are for our range, and the taking into account the actions that have happened previously that have filtered ranges down. Gets a little confusing, obviously, when you're bopping between tables. But I have only a certain amount of time in the day to play hands, and I want to gather as many as I can. Today we have about 15 hands post-flop to look at. I did make note that I might be folding to steals and folding to 3-bets, maybe a little, but it's not bad. 55, I think, is probably within the ballpark. C-bets at 55, which, considering the fact that I have multiple sizes, I think is okay. But anyway, I wanted to just look at that because I felt myself folding a lot to 3-bets. And these pools are generally pretty good in terms of free flop play. You don't see a lot of overcalls, except for very fishy players. And there's enough players, I think, like me, who are trying to play well, that that becomes a consideration. So I'm trying to think of any other intentions. I know I went in with something else, but I don't remember what it is right now. I think I said that I should talk through my hands a little bit more, take time to make decisions, which I feel like I did. Probably didn't talk as much as I should, but anyway, let's just get through it and see how play actually was. So we open, queen jack, get called on the button, no stats, so nothing to read, hit top pair. At this point, I think we're medium value. There's a flush draw for some denial needs, overcard denial needs, although likely not many of those for pre-flop caller. Let's just mix at some portion of the time bets and checks. We can certainly protect the checking range with a good top pair. There's not many queens that we're opening this early position. Queen 10 and queen 9 suited probably are the only other ones. So I think this would be a fine as a check or a bet. We elected to check today. Maybe we want to check drier boards and bet wetter boards because the wetter boards are going to induce more calls. There's more in the range that can call. So in that, and then like the drier boards will probably have more folds. So protecting a checking range when there's more folds in their range is not a bad thing, because it also could potentially induce some bluffs that we can bluff catch call. I'm not really big on check raising top pairs without any sort of further backup. So like in this case, I'm not sure I would check raise a queen with a middle-sized kicker if we had some sort of diamond draw behind or something like that, which obviously in this case isn't happening. Maybe say queen jack of clubs, we could look at check raising. But also it sets up a huge amount of denial, and granted, when we have sets and two pairs, this isn't going to be the case here, but we do want to have some check raises because we can't just check raise draws, we can't just check raise bluffs. So we certainly have to have some good and other value to check raise as well. But I'm thinking this probably isn't one of them, particularly against that size. So just a call. Turn is a blank. 5-4 gets there. And certainly that's in their range, and more likely than not in my range. I don't think I would open that small. So now we are fully in bluff catch mode and just hoping that they're betting their draws or worse queens. They polar again, and we're just going to have to call. It's too good a hand to fold. Too many bluffs in their range. Bad player. Notice though we will be at SPR1 with this call. And then we hit a queen on the river, which is great, but no need to lead. We can certainly expect them to push the pot in with lots of bluffs, with less, probably no lesser single pairs, just because we've called. So we've really concentrated our range into these queens. And they do push the pot, the stack, and we're losing to king queen and ace queen and other sets. So we've check raised most of our better value. This is really top of value range. I don't see any folds here, and we just get cooler if it turns out that they have something better, which they did. I also created new tags, and I'm going to, in my mind, tag these things as we go. And I don't think this is necessarily a great hand, but I do think it's probably a good hand. And I think if we look at the solver, we will see that that is the case. Oh, this thing hasn't even solved these things. Unfortunate. Sometimes that happens where these don't properly solve because the machine breaks down. So we'll put it in there again and just hope for the best. We may not actually get to use the solver today. Maybe we'll come back to that hand. Queen, ace queen. And we are going to certainly play this one aggressively. What is this? Oh, it's there. Their cards will be there, so I can't put it too low. So let's I think plan for a raise. We certainly could call with a strong ace and a suited hand, but as I've said, I wanted to try to increase my 3 bets from big blind. Out of position is not a great thing. Now granted they are 23, 27. It's pretty good. I don't think anything in their ranges indicate that they're doing this with any sort of over opening or something like that. So at some portion of the time, let's call, but also let's look at raising. So we've set a pretty big price. We get a call, so we can limit them down from aces and kings and probably ace king. But otherwise, we are looking at either worse aces or jacks, some queens, tens. So they hit it pretty well. I think this bet probably is okay, although the size is probably a little too big. We probably want to go smaller. Setting up a little bit of denial for king 10 flush draws and straights. One would expect those certainly to call, so especially a half pot bet. So there really isn't a lot of denial in there. This is a conceptual thing that I don't totally wrap my head around. Is like, we certainly want to quote unquote charge the draws, because when the draws don't come in, we've gained all of the EV that we necessarily have by playing against draws. But at the same time, it's not like the denial size is going to make any difference. So the size of the bet's going to make any difference for denial, because most people are not folding many flush draws, especially nutty flush draws, which are the only ones this guy likely has. Maybe they could call with Jack 10, say 10-9 of clubs, possibly. So, but having said all of that, they're strong. We are probably equally nutted. I say I have a little bit more nut hands. Aces, basically, is pretty well the only nut hand we have that they don't. We beat them with kings, against queens, and against tens and nines. And they have lots of sets that we also have. We're going to raise jacks. We'll eights probably we call. So I don't necessarily think we have a range advantage here either. And when they call, we got to give them the range advantage at that point, I think, especially on flushing cards. Now that king queen got there, so we block. I would expect that I should really stop betting at this point, and I'm not. I'm continuing to polarize, which I think is a pretty big mistake. I'm essentially betting to get calls from worse aces. So another worse ace just got there. Ace 10, ace jack are 2 pairs against our single pair. The only aces that are continuing here are ace 9 and maybe an ace 7, but highly unlikely. Lower aces, I think, well, maybe they call. Yeah. Having said all of that, look, the nuts changed and I'm still polarizing, so I think this is probably a blunder hand. Let's just say that it is right now already. I don't think there's any reason to be continuing to bet as strongly as we are. I think we could certainly put a bet in and get calls from those smaller aces, but the bigger our bets, the more those smaller aces are going to be folding. And then the 9 comes, so yet another another 2 pairs made it. Any king, no, actually we do have the nutted hand now to a certain extent with the queen. King queen beats us by continuing to, well, and we're also at a minuscule stacked pot like that. This bet here put us all in now. So obviously we're not folding, and we're just kind of blindly putting it in, hoping for the best, which turns out to be the case when they have ace queen, and we got lucky. So I don't like this hand. This was a mistake. This was a blunder. And we need to be more careful in those spots to adjust as boards run. I'm still not, oh yeah, here it is. Yeah, so like here's a great example of a day that did not go well. 3.61 EV loss, and I bet anything some of it is in this hand right here. Let's find out. Queen suited. Yeah, so it just sort of goes into no man's land of bad play. Too big a bet, no big bets at all, pure checks, and then a disaster river. So big blender hand, and good. The machine does not disagree with us, which is fine, because we fucked that up. So general note, complete board unawareness, counter to our session intention. Just I don't know. I don't even know what excuse I can make here. There's no logic here. It's just bad sizing and frequency through the hand. 0 out of 10. And we just got super lucky on the river. So let's just move on from that. We don't need to dwell on that hand too much. Then I want to see this queen jack hand quickly. This one looks okay. Check, call, yes. There are folds on the turn. Actually, the call is minus 27. Check, and then call is now a 0. Yeah, well, because we got a queen, so for sure. So actually the turn, even though there are at frequency more calls, that EV is significantly lower than the fold. Always kind of makes me wonder, like, why, when actions are mixing, this is supposed to be the same number. So that might be a solver error, maybe. There just really isn't much reason to continue calling big bets. Big bet. Big bet on flop. Big bet on turn. Yeah. See if the solve itself explains why. The turn, they big bet, and we. Okay. All of these are minus EV calls, interestingly enough. Don't really understand why the solver would want at max frequency calls in these spots when the EV is less than the fold. That is not something I understand at this point. I can't make any excuses or come up with any reasons why. So I'm actually going to make a note on that to just try and figure out. That's probably a question for the CTO Wizard people. Why in this hand? Oops. In this hand. Why are we calling with negative EV versus a 0 EV fold? That's the queen jack hand. Queen jack of spades. Okay, moving on. Get through that hand as quick as possible. Queen 10. We ended up there because of this limpy nonsense. Look, limps, lots of limps. 42 out of 5 played as limps. So make a note, Mr. Crappy Hand, and then when they just check, we're gonna, of course, barrel the turn or probe the turn for half the pot and expect a lot of the time to get folds. If we get raised, obviously easy fold or easy quit, folding out tons of better hands, most likely. But a limping range is not well protected or built properly, especially when they're playing short stack and just nothing makes sense. So I think at this point you just bet to capture a lot of fold equity, which we got. Gonna re-raise button open. We probably size a tiny bit bigger. We call, we get a flush draw with a top pair. So now we're in actually really good shape. We certainly could check and raise. It's a really nice hand. At some point, I think we want to do that. Unlike the last hand, we also have lots of value here that this board potentially, we can't expect Mr. Itchy Pants, Mitchy, to put a bet in necessarily, especially when we're pre-flop raiser. So I think we just go half pot and get calls from lots of pairs and even some overcard aces, ace 10, ace jack, stuff like that for turn, but we still have lots of value to extract. We are very close to SPR 1, 41. One bet will put us there. That puts us in. They fold. So they shoved. Afterwards, we're calling clearly with top pair and a flush draw. I don't think that's a bad play. Out of position can always be a surprise. So let's just quickly check to make sure we haven't missed something there. Oh no. So the bet is no good. Oh, the bet size is no good. No, the bet's no good. So even though the turn brings 5-4 in, so nets have changed slightly. We've got too big, out of position, go smaller. And here for betting, we again are a little too big. Mostly because I think our stack is so small now that we don't need to use big bets on either node. But what's more important is that this is mostly checking and is pretty high, like over one blind per 100. Is it per 100 or just hand? I think it's hand. One blind of EV in this hand is lost by betting versus checking. So let's take that into account. Again, they call, so their range is really concentrated. 5-4 certainly is there. Sets and two pairs are potentially there, and we don't have a polar hand. Like we actually don't, and stacks are very shallow. My stack is very shallow. So in future, continue to take these things into account, please. So I'm going to call this an inconsistency. Inconsistency. And bet size too big. Turn check as their range is very strong based on the 50 bet. A lot of air. Air has folded. King Jack. I think in this hand I decided to go for a raise because they're over opening a little too much, 29 VPIP. So we have a lot more room to get folds from them. And this hand we don't really want to call and play out of position. So let's just bet wider, or let's open it. Let's raise it and hope to get a fold, which we don't. And then this weird board that is not great. Would be great for us if we call the flop, but we raise. So we really don't have an advantage here. They called. They do have a wider range that Fold to 3-bet is 67%, so they do have folds. It's not like they raise call everything. But having said all that, I think they have an advantage here on us. And we're going to check it. They check behind. 8 comes. I got very sort of in my head about this. Like, is this a better card for, like, has the world become favorable? They will possibly check top pairs. They will potentially check a trip 7. Certainly, they have a capability to check 8-7 or 7s or 8s. So I don't think we could never say that we're nutted. Because I don't think I would ever use 8-7 or 7s or even 8s or maybe even 7s as a 3-bet, just because they don't block the hands that we're looking to not get called by. Like, we want to have kings and jacks and queens and some sort of ace in our hand to block those hands that do most of the calling in their realm. We wouldn't use 8s and 7s and all of that because it just blocks exactly what's here on the board. So I don't see us putting another bet in, and if we were, for whatever reason, to decide we should bet, we should be betting very small, because I think their range is now quite polar, and so the bets go small, and they go small to the point of 0, which is what we do. And they check on the river, or on the turn. Now I think they are very capped, so I don't think they have any value whatsoever. I think it would be highly unusual for someone to check monsters, houses basically. And now we potentially could get some thin value from lower pairs, like 9s, like 10s. Unlikely that there will be queens, unlikely there's kings or aces. So I think now we probably could put in a small bet. I don't think we really have a lot of showdown value, especially against a lot of ace high hands. Obviously, we have none there. I doubt we're going to see a queen 10 or queen 9. So I think we owe the pot maybe 6 or 5 blinds, but instead we check. So again, you know what? I'm going to say this is an inconsistency. Check, 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 check. We need to lead as they are strongly capped. And oh, we don't. So I've completely misread the board here. Of course, I've negated the fact that we have top pair. So in that case, maybe a check call is okay. Maybe a check call is okay. Maybe. Sorry, I didn't put together that we had a pair. I sort of did when it came, but then I forgot about it as I was talking. So checked for showdown value and expect to see a pair of 9s. Ace king. Okay. I'm pretty well sure. You know, the other part of small betting there is we can't just small bet with our bluffs. So small betting, oh yeah, small betting with that jack to get 9s to call, to get an ace king as a bluff catcher to call. I think that's probably, now that I'm thinking it all the way out, that's probably the right play in the end after all. And I did misjudge for a moment as I was talking about bluffs, but I didn't when I was discussing value. So the machine has a big turn bet on a majority of the time, slightly more EV, and then we have another big bet on the river. So I was wrong in my sizing. I wonder why that is. We want to get thin value from 9s, 10s, and ace king. But if we size so big, none of that thin value is going to call, and any of the slow played houses and like aces if they slow it. Yeah, that seems unusual to me that we would polarize on a pair of jacks on that board. I guess the flush draws, or they're not. Maybe, are we using a pair of jacks as a bluff? Very weird. Let's see. In theory, the machine will will protect this. Check. Well, we don't actually have any king jacks here. Where do we shed them? I don't have, probably didn't even use them to. Yeah, we don't use them to do this action here. We just call. So it actually doesn't like using these. Very rarely does it check raise, or not check raise, sorry, raise from the big blind. So by the time we get here, there just isn't any. We lead out. Yeah, we throw them out there. Throw them out there on the bonfire right away. Interesting. So I misplayed this hand, even though the analysis kind of gave us check marks to the river. We misplayed this particular combo. Yeah. Which one do we have? Jack of diamonds. Or king diamond. Jack heart. This one. Jack is no good. So it's funny, why would it say that it is? This is another place that I get a little confused is GTOs can have inconsistencies in their analysis from their library. Here's one here. Okay, so how do we approach a note on this? I think we call it, we do keep it as an inconsistency. We say solver doesn't love using these combos as raising hands pre, probably because few ace X will fold, and those are our targets. And flop, these are used now as bluff hands to get folds from ace king, etc. Ace X. Yeah. So by river, the combo is not in range. Yeah. And on flop, there will be times when we polar with a7. What other hands are in there? Let's see. We get here with aces, kings, the sevens. What sevens do we get here? King 7, sure. Jack 7 sometimes. 8-7, like I said, sometimes I'll do it, but most of the time I'm not because I'm, as I was saying, I want to unblock folds out of this area, these things and these things. Well, really, none of those are going to fold, but these things and these guys, all of those, we get folds from when we raise with I guess that in that way that makes sense. So if we use king jack, we're saying we're blocking the value that folds, which is kings and jack, king X and jack X hands. So we block the hands that call. We block the hands that call. Get this shit sorted. When we raise, we want to raise out value that is better than us that we don't block. So ace king will not fold. King queen likely will not fold. Jacks will not fold. Kings will not fold. So we have, when having in our hand, they're less likely to have those, and they're more likely to have these pocket pairs. So those combos make these things fold more often. Little pocket pairs. Using these 8-7, 7-6 as a raise pre-flop, 3-bet pre-flop, those will get folds from this stuff. And well, we're not actually seeing a lot of these. Those, what happened to those? Did they re-raise them? No, they call, they fold. Fold a lot of those. Yeah, right. So if we go here, we'll see that, say here. So we've raised using, here. We raise using a slice of these small cards and the big cards, and then some of these crummy kings and some of the king queen off, a tiny little slice of these guys, all right? The folds are all of these, which these block. So they get folds from these, and then these get folds from these and these. So the two different types of hands that can get folds from different height types based on what they unblock value-wise. So that's kind of what the thinking. So that's why when this flop comes down, there is an opportunity to polarize because we do have a7 and 7-6 and king 7 and not a ton of eights, queen 8. We have a bunch of flush draws, and we have the overs, which want denial from draws, which this is heavy, draw heavy, draw heavy. Even though it's got the nut 7 thing, we do have enough, although in like it's hardly any. We got 2 combos of, some portion thereof of those 2 combos. So by having those in there, that allows us then to use the jack, king jack off that we did use previously to get folds from pocket pairs. We can now use them to get folds from these better aces, kings. So if like we bet the polar size 75, yeah, we see some folding in these ace kings, lots folding in ace queens, ace jacks, ace tens, basically anything unsuited to the board, and even king queens. We get folds from the hands that are the same as us. We get some folds from 6s down here, 5s and 4s that came through. So those are all good things that king jack did for us, but only because we do have 7s. And do we have 8s? 8s were a pure call. 7s were a pure call. 7-6 off was a pure call, but 8-7, 7-6. So this is probably a good note in the future when you building this 3-bet bluff, or pulling my bluffs from my calling range or my folding range to put into my 3-bet range in the big blind. I want to try and pick off some pieces that can do good things depending on how the board comes out. So some of them are these low king suited hands that get folds out of bigger king suited hands, and some of the aces. And then some of them are these guys, which get folds out of same big hands, big uncomboed or unpaired hands. And yeah, so this plan to always use king jack, king queen, not such a great plan. I think slightly more of this stuff, because they also actually help in 2 ways. They get folds from bigger things better than the king, but they also help us when 5-5-4 comes or something, or 4-4-3, we actually have some board coverage using those that we don't have using these. Okay, I think that makes sense. I'm just going to say, listen to this video on Gen 20 to hear my thoughts working through how we compose a good 3-bet range from big blind versus EP ranges. Right. Sort form is we want to use diff combos to do diff things. So on this flop, when we are here with this combo, it is useful to get overcard and ace-x fold. Vice versa when holding. Yeah, right. Let's not get too far into the weeds. All of this stuff with the blockers and all this shit, it's a little bit of it's like a logic puzzle of this and then this, and if that, then this, that. So anyway, I still don't totally understand how it is that we can consider ourselves nutted on the river. Because we checked. I guess we carry, let's just look at that. So we check, and what was it, 8? Is it 8 heart? Check, and river's a jack club. Well, now the solve's different. All right. 8-7-7 heart. Is there any action I did different? We raised, called, we check, and then we're on that node, and now there's no bets. Isn't that interesting? So yet another inconsistency here. We do have those. We do have some of those. We do have nutted hands. But why now has the solver changed its mind about this card? Didn't we just see a different solve? Oh, was I looking in the wrong place? Yeah, maybe I was looking at the wrong node in the beginning. Okay, so fine. Sorry. Feel for the pain of other people watching this, which hopefully not many are, if not any. So river, good check. I got confused, thought I saw a polar bet strat on river, but must have been looking at wrong solve. I really feel like when we get to a solve, oh no, you know what it was? It was we were looking at this node here. That's what it was. Pretty sure. Okay, that's going to happen. We're going to look at the wrong node because it jumps you to the decision point, the last decision point, and we want to be on the previous one. And if we don't know to go to that, we will lose out. So anyway, so let's revise ourselves here a little bit. We could have definitely bluffed the flop, but it's not too bad. We're going to give it a good instead of an inconsistency. But lots of lessons learned about how different parts of this three betting range that we're trying to build from the big blind versus early position players different combos are going to do different things based on different boards. So having them there is really important, and best to combine them into big card, little cards, as opposed to two big cards. Yes, we're blocking kings and jacks and ace king and ace jack, which are the hands that we don't want to have to face. We want to be facing the middle cards that are going to fold, middle pairs mostly, and a7s and that kind of stuff. Although a7 we're beating with king jack, so it's not a bluff. But yeah, so that's in sum, that's the story there. So, oosh, a day of kind of making a few little mistakes in our analysis. Okay, so we have a open here. Gotta see the stack. And again, probably along with the consideration I had previously, using queen 10 from the small blind as a bluffing hand to get folds when we have these two Broadway cards. Now, with the conversation we just had, probably not the wisest. Let's use queen 5 suited if we're going to use anything. Queens definitely are good, jacks are good because they do have a lot more targets, lots more king X and some of those ace X's. So more of a range to fold with queen X hands versus king X hands. We are called, flop comes kind of dicey. We're out of position. We have tons of checks here, even with our value. So I say we check and we let them take the lead if they're going to. And we potentially are going to call one to see if we can pick up a flush card or a 9 or a king, maybe. Probably 9. We prefer a 9. We could use this to check raise, certainly. Again, tons of overcard hands, unpaired hands that might stab at this, but check raising, depending on size, likely not going to check raise small bets. So they don't bet. Flush does come. It's an 8, which is pretty close to the 9, giving us a gut shot and a flush draw, and now very bettable hand. Need to rep the value that we checked, which might be, say, aces, kings, possibly pair jacks. Not likely betting. Not likely not betting, say, 5s or 3s, but likely also not 3-betting those pre. 8s just got there, which is great. Now there's also 2 flushes on board, so they've got a ton of flush draw calls to make. We block one of them. Bet sizing wise, I think a B50, right in the middle. It's not too polar, so we can't really polarize yet. There's not really there's no straight on board. There's no flush on board. The only thing that's on board is jacks, which most of the time or some portion of the time we're going to bet. Most likely we could possibly have checked to check raise. So I do think a half pot 9 big blind bet, 9-10. Okay, I think that's okay. We get a fold. Now I want to see whether this is agreed to be a good line. I kind of feel like we're not going to see the queen 10 even there, so it doesn't want to bet. Oh, the size is too small. There you go. So yeah, we want to polar even more. So too cautious. Press hard on the draws, pricing them in with this size. So that's a mistake in my analysis. We want to definitely go bigger on the turn. But otherwise, do we have a lot of those? Yeah, for sure. We call and raise, so it's fine to put that in that range. Turn much bigger. Deny with sets. Deny flush. Flush draws with sets, etc. And I would imagine if they were to overshove, we're probably calling, I would imagine. So here, say we make it 125, and they shove. Yeah, we're gonna call 10 suited. Oh no, we're not. What do you know? Even with the gut shot, doesn't give us enough equity call. It's just outside of where we want to be. King 10 is down there. Okay, misjudged the equity. So a shove for 75% pot, or splitting our calls and folds between 50-50, and it's just literally outside the realm. Where is it here? Queen 10, queen 10, queen 10, king jack. Down there. And 30%. Cool. So no call if we got shoved on. Still only bluffing, even with a... Weirdly, I don't think they've got the... I mean, the machine doesn't have the proper... oh no, because we didn't size it up. So if we went 1.5, that would be like 30 into call 60, 79, and then overshove minus 30, 60. Yeah, 60. So we actually fold it out, fold to the shove. All right, that's fine. Good hand, I think. Not great. It's not great. Yeah, it's not great because we didn't set the right size. So, okay. Okay, let's call it an okay. Open king 8, get a call from the big blind. So nothing. I have some checks. Don't have any draws, nothing. If they bet, we're gonna fold. They do bet, and we fold. 6-5, we ended up limping in from some limper. Pair of fives, check the flop, ace comes on the turn, they bet, pot, we fold. Wouldn't even be here. Can call with flush draws, can call with higher pairs, can call with some nines. But these limp pots are so weird. Because I think if I had a hand that I actually wanted to play, I would just raise them and try and get it pre-flop. Tens are an open. We get raised. We're going to be in position. Don't see any value in repotting or re-4-betting. Too good a hand. Don't want to get shoved on. Call. Now we have a kind of a suey flop, but better for us, I'm going to say. Favorable world is ours. We are not, though, in our polar points of our range, so I don't see a check raise coming in here. We would be playing fives, eights, similar. We would have tons of flush draws, similar. We would have better over pairs when we have the ace for the redraw or the spade for the redraw. I think we could then start talking about check raising. But at this point, I think we just want to check call and let the board run out as it will, especially to a half pot bet. We call 2 pairs. Not great 2 pairs. They can have jacks that would have raised kings, queens, so they're more nutted than we are. Flush draw coming in theory, advantageous our range, but yeah, like at this point now when they bet, they down bet. No, they still half pot bet. A little less than half. Without that last spade, there seems like there would be a good reason to actually fold here, and I'll bet you the solve would have a mixture of folds. We're probably at a 0 EV for a call. I don't think we're losing, maybe, but we certainly aren't winning. We certainly don't need to turn our hand into a bluff. We certainly want to bluff catch ace, spade, king off. a spade X off, any of those. The low cards. Yeah, I mean, most of this board in a way hits our range better, but I just don't think the tens are the right hand to bluff with. I think with a spade, we certainly call with a spade, no problem. And it's just, we just fold out worse and get called by better, I think. So we call and then spike the river like the demons we are. And then we shove and they fold, unfortunately. So that would have been a great payday if they had had one lousy Fargan spade in their hand. Let's make sure that the analysis is in the realm of reasonable before we give ourselves a pat on the back. Nope. Raise, calls fine. Fold actually is there as well. We call the bet. We could raise a tiny little bit, but the EV is 0.06 worse. Then they just wanted, the machine wants to fold 99% of the time when the flush comes in. So this will be okay, because I think in the wilds maybe it's not a bad call. This guy is pretty tight, so he's probably got a better overpair than us. And I would guess that if we go into the solve, we'll see that the spades are necessary to call that fifth card. This one. And yeah, it's all spades, so that's the problem. So I think we'll actually give this inconsistency, and we'll say really need to have that 10 spade to call here. Loser overall. Got lucky on river. Don't say you never get lucky. Easy open, defend, top pair. They got all the nuts. It's going to be a small to medium sized bet. Medium size, B50. Flush comes in. Good for them when they lead. We could certainly look at folding. I think we're still a little too strong with especially the king spade. King, clubby, diamonds, whatever else. Maybe it's an easy fold. But I mean, the board's nasty as hell, right? Like even hitting a 3 of diamonds or 3 of spades on the river and getting a huge overbet is going to feel like hell because of the paired board, etc. You could have queen 8, no problem. They could have 8-6, no problem. They could have probably a unlikely they're going to have an ace flush. And there looks like they've got relatively reasonable numbers. This turn donk, do we have a stat for that? No. Probe turn. We haven't seen him do it. So anyway, we call it off and then close my eyes and call. I think I decided bluff catch city. I figured since we had the king, then we're slightly blocking some flushes. But I mean, and it's a 3/4 size bet. If it's an overbet, we can fold. This is probably a break-even bluff catch. And we got hit with 6s on the turn. So yes, smoked by the house. This is why our EV was so bad today. I think we're making some bad calls. This one, yeah, it's fine. All fine, all fine. It's actually quite a bit of EV in that call. I guess there's, assuming they have enough bluffs, but it's the way, right? With bluff catching is you just never know. Went to showdown is here, 1 at showdown. went to showdown. 23, 1 at showdown? Yeah, 1 saw the flop. You know what stat is in here? Stupid that they don't have it, is 1 at showdown. 1 saw the flop and went to showdown are there. But the the one that matters is whether they won or not. So it's not helpful, maybe. Oh yeah, here we go. Went to showdown, $1.60. So yeah, they're pretty I mean, how many stats do we have? 3 out of 5. So 60%. So they're overvalued on those river nodes. Could have looked at that. I didn't actually think to look there. C'est la vie. Let's give it a good. Actually, let's give it an okay. Just it's okay. If we won that hand, it would be a great hand. But since we lost, it's only okay. So this hand could certainly have 3-bet. We've talked about that, but it's also a really nice hand to just call with and see if we can get something. If we don't, 1-bet is going to get called with the overs and a potential flush draw. Flush draw comes in. I think at this point we could check raise. Certainly check raise this hand. Basically, we have a billion fives, and they have ace 5, maybe king 5, maybe 5-4 or 6-5. So this is a very reputable hand for a 2-5. Say let's go 12 or 13 blinds. 13 blinds, beauty. We get a fold. If the solver doesn't like this, I don't know what to do to make it happy. I don't know what to do. This could be our first and only great hand of the day. Nope. Oh, wait. Yeah, nope. Oh, wait. No, that's not it. What do we got? 10-9, 10-9, 10-9. 10-9. Give us a big thumbs up there, solver buddy. Yeah, we got raises. Check. We got lots of calls. Check. And we got all the all-ins. Or no, all the raises. And our raise is just slightly bigger. It doesn't think we need to go that big, but I'm begging to disagree. We got a ton of 5s that can get value from lots of over pairs, and this thing is not always a genius. I think we deserve a great hand for once. We got to give ourselves some credit. Ace Jack, open and defend, garbage, low board. If I'm betting bigger. No real value. Could have showdown hand. Could have showdown value. Nothing better folds. Likely, unlikely. Many pairs are folding. Unlikely, like ace queen maybe. Not enough folds. They bet, and I just couldn't see any point in calling here. I thought, what value do we have to call with? We have sets. We have not really any 2 pairs. We have lots of over pairs. We have some sets. Obviously, we bet some of them on the flop. We got to have some in our checking range, assuming we're protecting our checking range properly. We'll have better value. So other pairs, 10s, some jacks. Let's go downwards. Actually, the higher up we go, we probably are betting for denial to try and get out the bad draws. So 6s, 5s, 7s, 8s, lots of those pairs can call. I don't think we have to go down to ace jack. We could certainly call with ace king. But there's no point in my mind to call with ace jack. And I want to make sure that my folding where I have in my mind as a fold. No, I don't like that fold. Bad fold. Bad fold, says the solver. Let's see where that value threshold actually is for calling. This is assuming we've managed that range well enough. We're still calling so many cards here. All the aces. Yeah, all the ace highs, because we need them. Even spade draws, for sure, of course. But all these aces are going. So we're basically like a pip off. 2 pips off. All right. Solver wants a call. Plus, we probably don't have as much value in checker range as solver does. So we need even more thin value calls. Countering, assuming they are balanced, of course. So, maybe those two count each other out, but this is okay. Ace 3, I decide to 3-bet it, get a call. We're not going to see all the ones where I 3-bet and got no calls, so it's all our bluffing. This isn't really a bluff. Ace 3 isn't a bluff. Well, I guess it is. None of the bluffs are showing up because I've filtered out all the pre-flops. So then kind of a raggedy, not a raggedy, quite a wet little board that should we have called, we could certainly lead on. This is a board just tailor-made for a big blind call, but we didn't, so we have to check it. And we will see another card for sure, try to pick up another draw, maybe hit a spike of 2 because we're so lucky, but then we only make a pair. And then when they go polar, I think we just let it go. Lots of other bigger pairs to call with, better heart draws, like lots of other stuff. There's no point in us trying to just get to a gut shot. Maybe we could use it as a bluff. Bluffing a pair, they don't have a set. 6-7 is in our range. Unlikely. I'm going to, well, actually, we just learned 6-7 is a hand that we should 3-bet with at some portion of the time. So maybe we could use this as a bluff. But then again, ace blocks folds from better aces. But we do get folds from better aces. But it's a big bet, right? So just let it go. Maybe if they had bet 10 or 8, then we could raise. But they didn't. So the end of the hand has come. And that's a good hand. I'm going to bother looking at what the machine thinks. Can't just rely on it to always be checking everything. Check, check, check. Usually in middle position, monkey in the middle, I'm going to check almost everything. When I hit it, I'll check raise or I'll call, overcall. If we get 2 calls, we get a call and a call. We do have some little portion of this board, i.e. runners, and the odds are 13%, which is pretty good. I could see making a call here, and I do. And the 10 pairs, and once they bet, we fold. Somebody's got a 10. Queens are going to put the money in. This board is not the best board for queens, but it's not the most terrible either. Lots of top pairs, lots of flush draws, some 2 pairs that are ahead of us. Unlikely though, opening early, and no numbers on this guy. So I just lead for a polar. It's kind of a iffy board, and I think my understanding is boards like this we want a polar on with our overpairs, lots of denial. And oh, that's the other thing. They got no blinds, so we're just getting it in just fine, and it runs out in our favor for once. And I think that's our last hand. I think this is good. Yeah, that's the last hand. All right, so not the worst session. Got one great hand, had one blunder, I think, had a bunch of inconsistencies. I'm probably giving myself a little bit harder pat on the back than I should for some of those okay and good hands. Had a good discussion about how the blockers need to work, which is always, in theory, is a very fundamental beginner under concept, but getting your head around what they're doing, and particularly the different kinds of blockers that you have in your hand, and how no two blockers are necessarily blocking other parts of range, et cetera, et cetera. Of course, we've made note in previous sessions here that we want to avoid spending too much time on blockers, except for on river. But I think it's a worthy piece of data to use when building a 3-bet range. I've made note for myself to check my fold against 3-bet stats. Right now, they're looking not bad, I think. 55, I think, is pretty good. Fold to 3-bet after raise. Usually raises are about, like IU pot size bet raise, but that is a call, which I think the call goes into the pot and then the pot's made. So that's 100, B100. So that if everyone was doing that size, we'd actually want to defend a little bit more. Yeah, we want to defend closer to 60. So I think we'll probably 67, I believe, right? We get folds of 33% of the time to a pot size bet, I think. So I don't think it would hurt to get that number up just a little bit more. And if nothing else, we might not put it into calls, but we might put it into, we should put it into more of the bottom of our 4-bet bluffing range. So I don't really think we have many of those, if any. A lot of the time we're bluffing ace king off. Very rarely bluffing ace 5 off, ace 5 should using a 4-bet. We really need to do that. I've been using ace queen at points. It's very read dependent. Trying to read what they fold to 4-bets. Like this one is, I think, fold to 4-bet, 4-bet after fold to 4-bet. Yeah, so here it's 50% folds, but only 2 samples, 4 samples, 2 samples. So not super useful in our stats department. I don't have anything else to say. We'll do it again tomorrow.